1 million years ago, the Earth was a very different place, raw, untamed, and full of silent mysteries. The world stretched vast and endless, painted with wild forests, open grasslands, and towering mountains that touched the edge of the sky. Rivers carved their way through the land, feeding life into valleys, while glaciers held their dominion over colder regions, keeping much of the Earth frozen under their weight. It was an age where survival was never guaranteed, and the balance between life and death shifted with every rising sun. In this landscape walked our ancestors, creatures not yet fully modern, yet no longer beasts. They stood at a fragile edge, balancing between instinct and discovery, carrying within them the first sparks of what would one day become humanity. Their world was one of constant change, where seasons dictated survival, and even the smallest shift in climate could mean hunger, struggle, or migration. The air itself was alive with danger. Giant predators roamed freely. Saber-toothed cats waited in shadows. Enormous bears towered over the plains, and packs of wild wolves followed the scent of weakness. To survive among such creatures, early humans needed more than strength. They needed awareness, cooperation, and ingenuity. Every rustle of grass, every shifting shadow carried meaning. The wilderness was not simply a place to live in, it was a test, a constant trial of courage and endurance. Yet amidst this harshness, there was beauty. Sunlight poured through canopies of ancient forests, painting the ground in shifting patterns of gold. Herds of mammoths moved like living mountains across open plains. The stars above shone brighter than we know today, guiding those who dared to journey beyond familiar lands. In these skies, our ancestors lifted their eyes, perhaps wondering, perhaps dreaming beyond the struggle of each day. This was the dawn of humanity's journey, a time when survival meant learning to adapt, to listen to the earth, and to protect one another. It was here, in this ancient world of danger and wonder, that the story of mankind truly began. Every step they took across the shifting soil was more than survival. It was a footprint carved into history, leading us closer to what we are today. First footsteps, early ancestors and their struggles. Long before modern humans came to be, other beings carried the first burden of survival, our ancient ancestors. Among them were the Australopithecus, small and lightly built, walking upright yet still clinging to the safety of trees. They were fragile in body but resourceful in spirit. With hands that could grasp and eyes that could scan the horizon, they learned to move between forest and plain, always balancing between safety above and opportunity below. Their lives were short and uncertain, but every step they took on 2 feet pushed the story of humanity forward. As time passed, a new form emerged, Homo habilis, known as the handyman. With sharper minds and quicker hands, they chipped stone into tools, carving edges that could cut meat or crack open bones. Each spark of stone against stone was more than survival, it was the birth of invention. For the first time, our ancestors began shaping the world around them, not merely enduring it, yet danger still loomed, and their tools were as much for protection as for nourishment. Then came Homo erectus, stronger, taller, and braver in their reach. They were wanderers, stepping beyond the homelands of Africa and into unknown lands. Fire became their greatest ally, a flickering force that gave warmth in the cold, light in the dark, and safety from prowling beasts. Around those flames, they gathered as families and tribes, sharing food, stories, and protection. This was more than survival, it was community, the first echoes of society as we know it. Still, the struggles were relentless. Each day brought new trials, droughts that left rivers dry, storms that swept away fragile shelters, and predators always searching for weakness. Yet with every challenge, our ancestors adapted. They learned the patterns of migrating herds, the secrets of edible plants, and the paths across vast lands. Their footsteps were carved by hardship, but also by resilience, the quiet strength that refused to fade. From Australopithecus to Homo erectus, each ancestor left behind more than bones in the soil. They left a legacy of endurance. They carried the flame of survival forward, step by step, until the path finally opened toward us. Their struggles, their movements, and their small triumphs were the first chapters in the great journey of mankind. Shelter and fire, conquering the elements. For our early ancestors, survival was not only a matter of food and movement, It was also a battle against the elements. The earth could be merciless. Nights grew bitterly cold, rains lashed the plains without mercy, and winds howled across open grasslands, stripping away warmth and safety. To endure, humans needed more than strength. They needed shelter, a place where danger could not so easily reach. Caves became the first havens. Dark and silent, they offered walls of stone against prowling beasts and sudden storms. Within their shadows, families huddled close, finding safety in the earth itself. The cave mouth became a threshold between survival and peril, a fragile line where predators lurked in the night. For early humans, to claim a cave was not just to rest, it was to hold a fortress, however temporary, against the chaos of the wild. Yet the greatest discovery was not of stone or shelter, but of fire. Whether born from lightning striking dry grass or the friction of stone against stone, fire was a miracle that changed everything. Its light pushed back the darkness, revealing eyes that once glowed in the night. Its heat wrapped weary bodies, warding off the cold that had once claimed so many lives. Flames turned raw flesh into cooked meals, softening food and unlocking strength within it. Around fire, a new rhythm of life began. Tribes gathered in circles, their faces lit by flickering gold, their voices rising in murmurs and songs. The fire became the heart of the group, a place of warmth, of safety, and of memory. Predators who once ruled the night now hesitated, kept at bay by the dancing glow. For the first time, mankind held not only tools but a force of nature itself, a companion, a protector, and a teacher. Still, fire demanded respect. It could leap, uncontrolled, turning grasslands into seas of flame. It could vanish in rain, leaving only ashes and cold despair. But to those who learned its secrets, it became a symbol of power and resilience. Together with caves, with shelters built from branches, stone and skin, fire marked a turning point in human history. In conquering the elements, our ancestors took their first true stand against nature. No longer mere wanderers at the mercy of the wild, they had forged protection, walls of earth and circles of flame that allowed them to dream of more than survival. The hunter's instinct, survival through the chase. In the vast open plains, survival often came down to a single chase. For our ancestors, hunting was not simply a choice, it was a necessity, the thin line between hunger and survival. Yet they were not the strongest of creatures, nor the fastest. The great predators, lions, saber-toothed cats, and packs of wolves, outmatched them in strength and speed. What humans carried instead was something different: patience, intelligence, and the ability to work together. The first hunts were not grand battles with mighty beasts, but cautious acts of endurance. Early humans learned to track the footprints pressed into soft earth, to read the broken branches left behind by moving herds. They understood the patterns of animals, the times they drank, the paths they travelled, the signs of weakness in the old or the injured. Armed with simple spears and sharpened stones, they stalked their prey not with power but with persistence. One of their greatest techniques was persistence hunting, chasing animals across long distances under the burning sun. Where swifter predators tired quickly, humans endured step after step, their bodies built for distance. Slowly the prey weakened until it could run no more. It was not speed that secured the hunt, but relentless will. But hunting was never the work of one alone. It was a test of unity. One group would drive the prey forward, while others waited in ambush. With hand signals, shouts, and coordinated movements, they acted as one body, one mind. And when the kill was finally made, it was shared. Meat was not hoarded in secret. It was carried back to the tribe, feeding children, elders, and those who could not hunt. In this act of sharing, the bonds of community grew stronger, tying survival to generosity and trust. Around the fire, hunters told the stories of their chase, teaching the young where to strike, when to wait, and how to respect the life taken. Every hunt became more than survival. It was a lesson, a tradition, a connection between generations. The hunter's instinct, born of hunger and sharpened by danger, gave humanity more than food. It gave them cooperation, strategy, and the beginnings of culture itself. Each chase across the wild plains was a step forward, not just in survival, but in the making of mankind. Gatherers of the wild, the role of plants and nature. While hunting brought meat to the fire, it was gathering that filled the daily baskets of survival. For our ancestors, the earth itself was a giver, offering roots buried in the soil, fruits hanging from branches, and leaves rich with hidden strength. Long before farming was known, they lived by listening to nature, walking through forests and grasslands with watchful eyes and careful hands. Every plant carried a lesson. Some roots gave nourishment, starchy and filling, enough to sustain a family through lean days. Wild berries, sweet and sharp, were plucked with caution. Some could heal, while others poisoned the careless. Leaves and herbs were chewed to ease pain or brewed into simple remedies. Over generations, trial and error became knowledge, passed from elder to child, which bark soothed a fever, which leaf calmed a wound, which seed gave life. This early wisdom was not written in books but carried in memory, preserved in the rhythms of survival. Foraging was a daily ritual, often led by women and elders who knew the hidden places of growth. They learned the seasons of plants, the times of flowering and fruiting, the quiet signs that marked a tree heavy with food. In their hands, woven baskets grew heavy with nuts, seeds, and greens, treasures as vital as the meat brought home by hunters. Together, hunting and gathering formed a balance, strength in the chase, and patience in the search. Nature itself was both teacher and test. A field of tall grasses could hide grains waiting to be plucked, but also concealed snakes waiting to strike. Mushrooms sprouted after rain, some nourishing, others deadly. To survive, our ancestors had to move with respect, listening to the whispers of the wild. In these simple acts of gathering, humanity built its earliest relationship with the natural world. Plants were not only food but medicine, not only sustenance but wisdom. They taught humans to observe, to remember, and to share, and in every handful of roots, every cluster of berries, lay the quiet truth that nature provided enough if one knew where to look. The gatherers of the wild carried knowledge as precious as fire, weaving the threads of survival into the story of humankind. Family and tribe, bonds of survival. In a world of constant danger, no one could endure alone. Survival depended not only on strength or skill, but on the bonds formed between people. From the earliest days, humans gathered as families and tribes, weaving threads of connection that turned fragile individuals into resilient communities. At the heart of these groups were the instincts of protection. Parents guarded their children fiercely, keeping them close against the chill of night and the threat of predators. A child was more than a single life. It was hope, the promise of survival carried forward into tomorrow. Mothers cradled their young with tenderness, while fathers and elders stood watch, defending the tribe from harm. Together, they formed a circle of care, where the weakest were sheltered by the strength of the whole. Tribal life extended beyond blood. Kinship was not only about family ties, but about shared survival. A tribe was a living body, where hunters provided meat, gatherers brought food from the wild, and elders passed down wisdom earned through hardship. Tasks were divided, but the rewards were shared. When one succeeded, all were fed. When one suffered, all bore the weight. In this unity, humanity found its strength. Around the fire, voices rose in stories and lessons. Elders spoke of past hunts, of dangers overcome, of plants that healed and paths that led to water. Children listened, wide-eyed, their minds shaped not just by survival, but by culture, the passing of memory from one generation to the next. These gatherings were the first classrooms, where knowledge became as important as food. Protection went beyond the immediate family. If predators attacked, the tribe moved as one, shouting, throwing stones, brandishing spears. Their strength was not in claws or fangs, but in numbers and courage bound together. Alone they were prey. Together they were a force that even the fiercest beast hesitated to challenge. In these early bonds, humanity discovered something profound. Survival was not simply about living, but about living together. The ties of family and tribe gave meaning to struggle, turning hardship into unity and fear into strength. From these small circles of care grew the roots of society, the first foundations of the world we know today. Comparisons with animals of the time. In the wild world a million years ago, humans were not alone in their strubukahol. Around them moved creatures both fierce and gentle, each with their own ways of survival. To watch these animals was to see reflections of themselves, patterns of care, instincts of protection, and the endless rhythm of life and death. Like humans, many animals lived within groups. Wolves hunted in packs, their survival rooted in cooperation, just as tribes relied on unity in the chase. Elephants moved in herds led by wise matriarchs, guiding the young and remembering the paths to water, echoes of human elders passing knowledge to their kin. Even apes, close relatives of humankind, carried their young against their bodies, nurturing them with the warmth and teaching them the skills of the forest. Yet there were differences as well. Animals lived by instinct alone, repeating ancient patterns passed down through blood and nature. Their societies were strong but limited. Humans, though fragile in body, carried something more, the ability to imagine, to plan, to choose beyond instinct. While wolves hunted for the moment, humans could prepare tools for the future. While apes protected their young, humans wrapped protection in stories, traditions, and memory, creating bonds that stretched beyond a single lifetime. Still, the lessons from animals were powerful. Watching the watchful eyes of a lioness guarding her cubs, humans felt the same fierce instinct burning within. Observing the cooperation of a herd under threat, they understood the value of standing together. Nature became both teacher and rival, shaping their behaviors through silent comparisons. But where animals lived in cycles, repeating the same patterns across centuries, humans began to push forward. They built fairs not just for warmth, but for gathering. They shared food not only with their own children, but with the tribe as a whole. Their protection stretched beyond bloodlines, weaving communities larger than the family unit. In those comparisons lay the heart of human evolution. Early man mirrored the creatures of the earth, yet also stepped apart from them, slowly carving a different path. They were of the wild, yet not bound entirely by it, an animal, and yet something more, standing on the edge of transformation. Danger at every turn, predators and prey. The world of our ancestors was never gentle. Every step across the plains, every drink at a river's edge, carried the shadow of danger. The land was shared with giants and hunters, each carved by evolution into weapons of survival. To live was to walk among them, fragile yet determined, always alert to the silent threat of teeth and claw. Among the most feared were the saber-toothed cats. With long curved fangs like daggers, they lay hidden in tall grasses, waiting for the moment to strike. A single leap could bring down creatures many times their size. For early humans, a careless step too near meant swift death. Only fire, stones hurled in unison, and the strength of the group could drive such predators away. Then there were the giant hyenas, larger and stronger than those we know today. They hunted in packs, cunning and relentless, capable of stealing kills from weaker creatures, including humans. Their laughter-like calls echoed across the night, reminders that even in numbers, danger could circle close. To face them, tribes learned to stand together, shouting, brandishing spears, and protecting the young within a ring of guardians. Not all giants were hunters. The mighty mammoths roamed the open plains, vast as moving boulders, their tusks sweeping like curved blades. They were not predators, but they carried their own danger. To hunt one was to risk everything. One charge could scatter a tribe, one blow could end a life, yet their meat, hide and bones were treasures too great to ignore. With patience, strategy and courage, humans sometimes brought them down, turning the impossible into survival. Every encounter with predator or prey taught lessons. Humans learned the importance of silence in the grass, of reading the wind, of moving together as one body. They crafted sharper weapons, built stronger fires, and placed lookouts at night. Fear was constant, but it was also a teacher sharpening awareness, forging unity. For early humans, the world was a battlefield of instincts. They were not the strongest nor the fiercest, but they were the most adaptable. Each narrow escape, each victory in the hunt, each night survived against prowling eyes carved resilience into their very being. In facing danger at every turn, they shaped the skills that would one day set them apart. Amid the daily struggle for survival, there came moments when early humans paused to face mysteries greater than the hunt, greater than the fire, greater even than life itself. Death was a presence they could not ignore. A fallen hunter, a child taken too soon, an elder slipping into silence. These moments stirred questions the wilderness could not answer. Out of grief and wonder, the first sparks of spirituality were born. Our ancestors began to treat the dead with care, not leaving bodies exposed to the wild, but placing them gently in the earth. Stones were laid, flowers scattered, sometimes tools or food left beside the resting place. These simple acts spoke of something profound. a belief that life did not end at death, that there was a journey beyond the silence. Burial became more than protection from scavengers. It was a ritual, a mark of respect, a whisper of hope. Around the fire, stories may have been told to comfort the living. Perhaps they imagined spirits travelling across the stars or joining the great herds of the plains. Perhaps they believed the dead still watched over the tribe, guiding the hunt, protecting the children. The unseen world began to weave itself into their thoughts, filling the spaces that survival alone could not explain. Signs of these beliefs echo through the ages: red ochre sprinkled on bones, hands carved into cave walls, symbols drawn in darkness. These were not just marks of art, but expressions of connection, attempts to speak to something greater, to reach across the boundary of life and death. The birth of spiritual thought gave humanity more than rituals. It gave meaning. It softened the weight of loss, bound tribes closer in shared mourning, and inspired courage in the face of danger. To believe that there was more beyond the horizon of death was to carry hope into the unknown. In these beginnings, humanity stepped into a new realm of thought. They were no longer creatures bound only to the earth. They became dreamers, seekers of answers in the silence of the stars. From simple burials and whispered prayers grew the seeds of religion, myth, and wonder, shaping not only how humans survived, but how they understood their place in the world. In the long story of human survival, nothing marked a greater leap than the birth of tools. At first, nature alone provided what was needed: sharp rocks, sturdy branches, bones stripped of their flesh. But over time, early humans began to see more than simple objects. They saw possibilities. With their minds sharper than claws and their hands steadier than paws, they transformed the raw gifts of the earth into instruments of power. The first of these was the hand axe, a simple stone chipped on both sides to form a cutting edge. It was heavy, crude, yet effective, an all-purpose tool that could chop wood, slice meat, and break bones for the marrow within. In those sharp flakes of flint, one can almost hear the spark of intelligence, the dawning of human creativity. A rock was no longer just a rock, it was a key to survival. Spears followed, long extensions of the arm tipped with fire-hardened points or sharpened stone. With them, distance was conquered. No longer did a hunter need to face a charging beast at arm's length. Spears gave reach, safety, and cooperation, for hunting with them often required the coordination of the group. These tools turned survival into strategy. Flint, with its ability to be shaped into razor edges, became the treasure of ancient hands. Striking stone against stone, our ancestors carved scrapers, knives, and arrowheads, each flake a small step in the march of progress. The skill itself was as vital as the tool. To master the art of shaping stone was to hold knowledge, and knowledge was a weapon as sharp as any blade. But tools were not only about hunting, they built shelters, scraped hides for clothing, carved wood for fires, and prepared food that nourished growing communities. Each chipped edge represented time, effort, and foresight, qualities that set humans apart. Animals had strength, claws, or teeth. Humans instead shaped the world with their minds and hands. From stone axes to spears, from simple blades to the earliest signs of craftsmanship, tools were more than objects. They were the first whispers of invention, the seeds of civilizations yet unborn. With every strike of flint, humanity carved not just stone but its future. Human history is, at its heart, a story of movement. From the heartlands of Africa, small groups of early humans set out on journeys that would shape the destiny of our species. Step by step, mile by mile, they crossed rivers, climbed mountains, and wandered into lands unknown. Each new horizon carried both opportunity and danger, demanding resilience, courage, and adaptation. Migration was not just about survival, it was about discovery. As the ice ages gripped the planet, vast glaciers carved the earth into harsh, unforgiving landscapes. Those who ventured north learned to battle freezing winds and endless snow, wrapping themselves in animal furs and mastering the art of fire. They built shelters from bone and hide, transforming the cold into a place they could endure. In contrast, groups who moved into deserts faced a different challenge: scorching sun, scarce water, and shifting sands. To survive, they learned to read the land, track hidden water sources, and travel at night when the heat relented. Forests, too, presented trials. Dense, shadowy, and filled with creatures both friend and foe, they forced humans to sharpen their senses. In the green maze of trees, silence became a tool, and cooperation a lifeline. Hunting required patience and stealth, while gathering demanded deep knowledge of plants, what healed, what harmed, what nourished. Every environment sculpted human behavior, reshaping how families lived, hunted, and told stories around the fire. Yet migration was not only about struggle. With each move came growth. Rivers offered fish, fertile valleys gave rise to abundance, and coastal shores revealed new worlds of shellfish and sea mammals. Expansion allowed ideas to spread as well. A tool invented in one region could inspire another thousands of miles away. Fire-making techniques, hunting strategies, even the beginnings of art, these passed along invisible threads that connected distant groups. Over thousands of years, this relentless movement carried humans across continents, into Asia, Europe, Australia, and eventually the Americas. It was not a single march, but countless journeys woven together. Each step outward reflected the same spirit, the drive to endure, to adapt, to seek what lay beyond the horizon. Migration was not just survival, it was the foundation of human destiny, carving pathways that led us from scattered tribes to the beginnings of global humanity. From the beginning, nature was both a teacher and a test. Early humans did not walk alone. They shared their world with beasts that roared, birds that soared, and rivers that carved the earth. Every sound, every shadow, every pattern of the wild carried meaning. To survive, they learned not only to fear the unknown, but to read it, to listen to it, to live in rhythm with it. Animals became silent instructors. From the predator's stealth, humans learned patience in the hunt. From the flocking of birds, they discovered the wisdom of unity, of moving together for protection and strength. The migration of animals hinted at hidden paths, water sources, and the changing seasons. Even insects, in their tireless building, taught the value of persistence and preparation. The cycles of nature offered a second classroom. The rise and fall of the sun marked time, teaching humans when to rest and when to rise. The turning of seasons revealed lessons of abundance and scarcity. Spring's promise, summer's plenty, autumn's warning, and winter's silence. The stars above scattered across the night sky, guided journeys, whispered direction, and inspired wonder that reached beyond survival into the beginnings of curiosity and thought. Instinct, too, was sharpened by these lessons. The rustle of leaves warned of lurking predators. The smell of rain promised renewal. The changing winds carried both danger and opportunity. Those who watched, listened, and learned thrived. Those who ignored nature's signs fell into its silent grasp. Slowly, humanity's instincts became woven with wisdom carried forward like an invisible inheritance. Yet these lessons were not only about survival. They shaped the very way humans thought and dreamed. Watching the endless renewal of life, they began to wonder about cycles beyond their own lives. They saw death not as an end, but as part of nature's design. From this grew respect, reverence, and the seeds of philosophy. In learning from nature, humans discovered more than how to endure. They found balance, patience, and a mirror of themselves in the world around them. The earth became both provider and mentor, whispering truths that would echo through every age, that to thrive one must not conquer nature, but live within its flow. In the long arc of human evolution, survival was never a solitary act. It was not the sharpest spear or the swiftest hunter that ensured humanity's endurance, but something deeper, an instinct to protect, to shield one another against the perils of the wild. These instincts of care, defense, and unity became the silent architects of our species' survival. Imagine a world where threats lurked in every shadow, saber-toothed predators, unrelenting storms, rival tribes competing for scarce resources. In such a world, the act of standing together meant more than strength. It meant existence. A mother shielding her child from danger, a hunter risking his life to guard his companions, or a group circling their campfire to keep watch against the darkness. These moments of protection were the heartbeat of early human life. Care extended beyond kinship. Injured hunters were not abandoned. They were nurtured back to health, a rare quality among animals. Infants were not just the responsibility of their parents, but of the community as a whole. This shared guardianship laid the foundation of empathy, weaving bonds stronger than blood. To protect one another was to protect the future. Defense, too, became a collective art. Early humans learned that unity amplified courage. Alone, a single figure was vulnerable, but together, With spears raised and voices lifted, they became a force capable of deterring even the fiercest predator. The instinct to defend did not merely safeguard bodies, it safeguarded culture, knowledge, and the fragile continuity of human stories passed from one generation to the next. And then came unity, the binding thread of protection. It was unity that allowed small bands to grow into tribes, and tribes to form the first seeds of society. Through unity, humans developed rules of conduct, systems of cooperation, and rituals of remembrance that reinforced loyalty. In this bond, individuals found not only safety but identity, belonging to something greater than themselves. The legacy of protection runs through us even now. The instinct to defend loved ones, to care for the vulnerable, and to unite in times of crisis is a living echo of our ancestors. It was not merely survival, it was humanity's first lesson in compassion, courage, and community. Without these instincts, the human journey might have ended in silence. With them, it found its voice. The story of early humanity is not merely one of survival, but of transformation. Each step, from carving flint to lighting the first fires, from huddling in caves to venturing across frozen tundras, was more than a struggle against the elements. It was a step toward becoming something greater. The hardships faced by those who came before us were not wasted. They were the seeds of civilization itself. From the first sparks of curiosity that turned stone into tools, to the careful watching of animals that taught us how to hunt, gather, and protect, early humans shaped knowledge out of necessity. Each lesson etched into their daily lives was passed down like a whisper from one generation to the next. Slowly, those whispers grew into traditions, into languages, into cultures that bound people together in ways the wild could not tear apart. Protection became more than a reaction, it was a way of life. The instinct to guard children, to share food, to fight as one against predators and storms, grew into bonds of unity. Those bonds became the roots of families, of tribes, of communities. And in those circles of warmth and trust, the first sparks of civilization glimmered. Survival had given birth not only to endurance but also to imagination, the ability to dream of something beyond tomorrow's hunt. With each migration, humans carried more than tools and fire. They carried stories, ideas, and the memory of the lands they had crossed. These became the threads of identity, weaving together the fabric of humanity. The deserts, the forests, the mountains, and the icy plains all left their mark, teaching resilience, patience, and adaptability. Out of struggle came wisdom, out of necessity came creativity. And so, the journey of prehistoric man was not just footsteps in the sand or prints on ancient earth. They were the beginnings of roads, paths that led toward farming, settlements, trade, and, eventually, civilizations that would rise and fall. The lessons of survival became the foundation stones of society. Every echo of the past reminds us that the comfort of the present was carved from the trials of long ago. From survival to society, from instinct to imagination, the footsteps of prehistoric man march on, not buried in the past but alive within us, guiding the endless journey of humanity.